You know what they never tell you at the Galactic Assassins Guild orientation? They never mention that humans are, clinically speaking, completely insane. No, seriously. I have 17 years of experience. I have terminated targets across 43 star systems. I have ended beings made of pure energy, hive minds spanning entire moons, and one particularly annoying silicon-based duke who kept regenerating his head. But humans are different. My name is Krell, just Krell. On my homeworld of Vexor Prime, we do not do the whole multiple names thing. One name, one reputation, one very expensive fee for making problems disappear. And I was good at my job. Past tense. We will get to that. The contract came through on a Tuesday. Well, the Terran equivalent of Tuesday. My species does not actually experience time the way you do, but I have learned to adapt. Client wanted one Marcus Webb eliminated. Human. Male. 34 standard years old. Occupation listed as freelance salvage operator, which in the galactic underworld means he stole things and sold them to the highest bidder. The price on his head was substantial. 300,000 credits. That kind of money meant someone wanted him dead badly. I accepted the job within milliseconds. The dossier painted Webb as your typical human scavenger. Average height for his species at 1.8 meters. Brown hair. Green eyes. No military background. No combat training listed. No cybernetic enhancements. Just a guy with a fast ship and apparently a talent for being in the wrong places at the wrong time. He had recently acquired something valuable, something my client wanted to stay buried. Literally? Way. It was some kind of data core from a pre-war weapons facility. Boring details. I did not care. My job was simple. Find Webb. Eliminate Webb. Collect payment. Go buy that new thermal regulator for my ship that I had been eyeing. Easy, right? Wrong. So very catastrophically wrong. I tracked Webb to a refueling station orbiting a nothing planet called Kestros VI. The station was one of those grimy, barely legal operations that catered to the kind of clientele who appreciated not being asked questions. Perfect hunting ground. I had done this dance 1,000 times. Blend in with the crowd, identify the target, wait for the right moment, and strike. Clean, professional. Over before anyone realized what happened. Webb was at the bar. Of course he was. Humans and their alcohol consumption would be fascinating if it were not so predictable. He sat on a stool that looked ready to collapse under him at any moment, nursing something amber in a glass that had definitely not been cleaned properly in weeks. He wore a brown jacket that had seen better decades, scuffed boots, and had this perpetually tired expression that suggested he had given up on life making sense somewhere around his 20th birthday. I positioned myself 3 seats down, close enough to act, far enough not to trigger suspicion. My species, the Vexorians, we look vaguely reptilian to human eyes. Scales, vertical pupils, the works. But we are not particularly threatening at first glance. We are short, barely reaching human chest height. We have slender builds. People underestimate us. That is how I have stayed alive this long. I ordered a drink I had no intention of consuming and waited. Patience is 90% of assassination work. The other 10% is knowing exactly where to place the blade, or the bullet, or the poison, or the precisely calibrated neural disruptor, depending on the target's biology. For Webb, I had chosen something simple. A neurotoxin. 1 prick with the needle concealed in my ring, and he would be dead in 30 seconds. Heart failure. Completely natural looking to anyone without a deep tissue scanner. I would be off the station before anyone even realized he was not just passed out drunk. He took another sip of his drink. I waited. He scratched his jaw. I waited. He glanced at his datapad. I waited. Then he did something unexpected. He looked directly at me. Not a casual glance, not a quick look around the room. He turned his head, locked eyes with me, and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a knowing smile. the kind of smile that said, "I see you." My primary heart rate increased. Humans should not be able to spot a professional tail. Their senses are mediocre at best. Their pattern recognition is decent but not exceptional. This should not have happened. "You know," Webb said, loud enough for me to hear over the station's background hum and the terrible music bleeding from the overhead speakers, "I gotta say, Krell, you have terrible taste in bars." I froze. He knew my name. He knew my name. That was impossible. I operated under 16 different aliases. My real name was buried under encryption that would take a military AI weeks to crack. How did a 2-bit human salvager know my actual designation? "I think you have mistaken me for someone else," I said, keeping my voice level. "Never confirm. Never deny. Assess the situation." Webb laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was genuinely amused, like I had just told him a particularly good joke. "Right, sure. And I am definitely not the guy you came here to kill. We are both just two random beings having drinks in this lovely establishment that smells like something died in the ventilation system. Which actually, knowing this place, probably did." He took another drink. Completely calm, completely relaxed. Meanwhile, my secondary heart had now joined my primary heart in accelerated rhythms. "You have 5 seconds to tell me who sent you before this gets awkward," Webb continued. "Well, more awkward. This is already pretty awkward." I calculated my options. Option 1, deny everything and leave. Option 2, attempt to complete the contract right here, right now, and accept the collateral damage. Option 3, actually engage with the target and figure out what I had walked into. "How do you know my name?" I asked. "I know lots of things," Webb said. He spun on his bar stool to face me properly. "But, for instance, I know you work for the Guild. I know your success rate is 96.3%. I know you prefer neurotoxins for human targets. And I know that about 45 seconds ago, you were planning to stick me with whatever nasty little surprise you have in that ring on your upper right appendage." I looked down at my hand. The ring was completely concealed. There was no visual indication of its purpose. Even most guild members would not recognize it. "How?" "Because," Webb said, finishing his drink and setting the glass down with a decisive clink, "I used to be one of you." That made no sense. Humans were not part of the Assassin's Guild. The Guild was old, established long before Earth even achieved spaceflight. We had members from 217 species. Humans were not among them. They were too new, too chaotic, too, well, human. "That is impossible," I said. "Lots of things are impossible until they are not," Webb replied. He pulled out a small metallic card and slid it across the bar toward me. "Go ahead. Scan it." I hesitated, then used my datapad scanner. The card registered. Guild credentials. Deep cover operative. Status inactive. Name Marcus Webb. Clearance level red. Red clearance. That was higher than mine. That was higher than 98% of active operatives. That was the kind of clearance reserved for people who handled galaxy-ending problems. "You dropped out," I said slowly. "Retired," Webb corrected. "Subtle difference." "I did my time. I killed my share of targets. Then I decided I liked breathing more than I liked the job. So I took my pension, bought a ship, and went into the salvage business. Much less stabbing involved. Usually. Why is there a contract on you?" Webb sighed. It was a heavy sigh, the kind that carried years of exhaustion. "Because I found something I was not supposed to find. And because the person who hired you really, really does not want that information getting out." "What information?" "Can you not guess?" Webb asked. He leaned back, casual as anything. "Come on! You are a smart Vixorian. 300,000 credits is not chump change. That is serious money. What kind of secret is worth that kind of payout?" I thought about it. The data core. The pre-war weapons facility. The client's insistence on total elimination. The client is tied to war crimes, I said. Ding, ding, ding. Webb made a gesture that I think was supposed to be celebratory but mostly looked sarcastic. We have a winner. Specifically, the client used to run experiments at that facility. Really nasty stuff. Things that violated about 47 different galactic conventions. When the war ended, they buried the evidence and reinvented themselves as a legitimate business person. But I found the data. I found the proof. And now they want me dead before I can share it. Why have you not shared it already? Because, Webb said, and his tone shifted to something harder, something cold. I wanted to see who they would send. I wanted to see how far they would go. Turns out, pretty far. They hired the best. No offense, but your reputation precedes you, Krell. I should have just killed him right then. Contract was a contract. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the realization that I had walked into something much larger than a simple assassination. Maybe it was the fact that Webb knew my name and had not tried to kill me despite clearly having the opportunity. What do you want? I asked. I want to make you a counteroffer, Webb said. He pulled out another datapad and slid it over. My client, your client, is Senator Vornis, 3rd District Representative. Very rich. Very powerful. Very good at covering tracks. This datapad contains evidence of 15 other assassinations they have commissioned over the past decade. People who got too close to their secrets. Journalists. Investigators. One particularly nosy accountant. I looked at the datapad but did not touch it. Webb continued. You can kill me. Collect your 300,000 credits. Go home happy. Vornis gets to keep their secrets, and in 5 years, maybe 10, they hire someone to kill you because you are a loose end. Or, he paused dramatically, you can help me take them down. We expose everything. We make sure they spend the rest of their life in a very small cell on a very unpleasant prison planet. And you get to keep breathing without looking over your shoulder for the rest of your days. That is not how the guild works, I said. We do not take sides. We fulfill contracts. The guild, Webb said, is about survival. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. Taking this job means you become Vornis's problem. And trust me, you do not want to be Vornis's problem. He had a point. A frustrating, logical point. Why would I trust you? I asked. Because, Webb said, standing up from his bar stool with a stretch that suggested his back hurt, I have had 3 separate opportunities to kill you since you walked in here. And I have not taken any of them. That was concerning. What opportunities? Webb pointed to the bartender. He is mine. Ex-military. Very good with a plasma rifle. Then he pointed to a figure in the corner I had barely registered. She is mine. Explosives expert. Could have turned this whole bar into vapor. Finally, he pointed up at the ceiling. And the station's defense turrets. I may have done some creative rewiring earlier today. I felt my scales tighten against my skin. A defensive reflex. I had walked into a trap, and I had not even realized it. So here is the deal, Webb said, extending a hand in that strange human gesture of greeting. You can walk away. No harm, no foul. I will even wait 24 hours before I disappear so you can tell Vornis you lost track of me. Or you can shake my hand, help me take down a genocidal lunatic, and we both walk away from this richer and breathing. I stared at his hand, then at him, then at the bartender, who was indeed watching us very carefully, then at the figure in the corner, who had just shifted position to have a better angle on me. This was not how contracts were supposed to go. This was messy. This was complicated. This was everything the guild trained us to avoid. But Webb was right about one thing. Vornis would eventually tie up loose ends. That was how powerful people operated. And I was very much a loose end. I reached out and shook his hand. Human custom. Firm grip. Direct eye contact. I am going to regret this, I said. Oh, absolutely, Webb agreed cheerfully. But you will regret it while alive, which is better than the alternative. And that was how I, Krell, one of the most successful assassins in the known galaxy, ended up partnering with my target. Because humans, as I mentioned, are completely insane. And apparently that insanity is contagious. Webb released my hand and gestured toward the door. Come on, let me introduce you to the rest of the team. We have about 6 hours before Vornis realizes you have not checked in, and then things are going to get exciting. Exciting? I asked, following him despite every professional instinct screaming at me to run. Well, Webb said with that infuriating grin, they probably will send someone else to kill both of us. Maybe multiple someones. But hey, look on the bright side. What bright side? At least you will not die bored. I was definitely going to regret this. We left the bar and headed deeper into the station. Webb walked with the confidence of someone who owned the place, nodding to various beings as we passed. Some nodded back. Some deliberately looked away. This was his territory, I realized. He had been preparing for this. Question, I said as we navigated a corridor that smelled like fried circuit boards and desperation. How long have you known Vornis would send someone? About 3 weeks, Webb said. Found the data core 5 weeks ago. Took me a few days to crack the encryption. Once I saw what was inside, I knew exactly what would happen. Vornis does not take chances. So I set up here, made friends, and waited. You could have run, hidden, changed your identity. Could have, Webb agreed. But then Vornis wins. They get to keep pretending they are a respectable member of society instead of the monster they actually are. And I have seen what they did, Krell. I have seen the reports, the experiments, the casualties, thousands of beings, used like laboratory animals. And for what? Weapons research that did not even work properly. The war ended, and they just walked away. It got elected to the Senate. Started a new life. No consequences. There was anger in his voice now. Not hot anger. Cold anger. The kind that sits in your chest and calcifies over time. You could have sent the data to the authorities, I pointed out. Webb laughed bitterly. Vornis is the authorities. Or at least, they have enough of the authorities in their pocket that any official channels would go nowhere. The data would disappear. I would disappear, and Vornis would keep smiling for the cameras. No, this needs to be public. Loud, undeniable. We reached a door marked with symbols I recognized as Terran warning labels. Webb input a code, and the door slid open to reveal a surprisingly well-equipped operations room. Multiple screens displayed various data feeds. Weapons racks lined one wall, and 3 individuals looked up as we entered. The bartender from earlier was there, now without the apron. He was human, built like someone who had spent considerable time in military service. Scars on his forearms suggested combat experience. The figure from the corner was female, also human, with short dark hair and the kind of eyes that calculated trajectories and blast radiuses habitually. Explosives expert, as Webb had said. The third member surprised me. A Quilvan, insectoid species. 6 limbs. Compound eyes. They were a data specialist, judging by the 12 separate datapads arranged around them. Everyone, Webb said, this is Krell. Krell, this is everyone. Big guy is Torres. Explosives enthusiast is Rena. And our friendly neighborhood data wizard is Click. Click? I asked. The Quilvan made a rapid clicking sound with their mandibles. Easier for humans to pronounce than my actual designation, they said in perfectly clear standard. Welcome to the team. Webb said you might be reasonable. Reasonable is a strong word, I muttered. You did not kill him, Torres said in a voice that suggested gravel being processed in a rock tumbler. That is reasonable enough. Brief him, Webb said to Click. I need to check our external sensors. If Vornis sent Krell, they might have sent backup. Click gestured to one of the screens with a free limb. Senator Vornis. Currently serving their 3rd term. Public approval rating, 67%. Private approval rating among people who actually know them, approximately zero. They have accumulated considerable wealth through, shall we say, creative interpretation of disclosure laws. They are corrupt, I translated. Monumentally, Click agreed. But the weapons facility data is the real problem. During the Krellian conflict, before peacetime agreements were established, Vornis ran a research installation designated Black Site Omega. Official records state it was decommissioned after the war. Unofficial records, which Webb found, indicate they conducted experiments on sentient beings without consent, primarily prisoners of war. The mortality rate was 93%. I felt a chill run through my scales. War was one thing. War had rules, or at least it was supposed to. What Click was describing was something else entirely. How many casualties? I asked. Click's mandibles moved in what I had learned was their species equivalent of a grim expression. Current estimate, 22,417 beings, multiple species. The experiments were, quote, to test biological weapon effectiveness across different physiologies. 22,000. That was not a crime. That was genocide dressed up in scientific language. And Vornis just walked away from this, I said. Walked away, got elected, and has been living comfortably for 15 years, Rena said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was sharp, clipped. Military training showed through. Webb wants to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of monster sits in that Senate seat. Which brings us to the plan, Webb said, returning from whatever he had been checking. We have the data. We have proof. But we need to deliver it in a way that cannot be ignored or suppressed. That means public release, simultaneous broadcast to every major news network, every government database, every public forum we can access. That will require significant processing power, Click said, and access to multiple communication arrays simultaneously. Doable but complicated. Which is where the exciting part comes in, Webb said, and I immediately did not like his tone. There is a major Senate gathering happening in 72 hours on the Capitol world. All representatives present. Full media coverage. If we can get the data released during that event, with Vornis sitting right there, it becomes impossible to spin. The evidence goes public. Vornis gets arrested live on every broadcast channel in the galaxy. Justice served. And how, I asked slowly, do you plan to access secure government communication systems during the most heavily guarded political event of the year? Webb smiled. That same knowing smile from the bar. That is where you come in, Krell. Because we are going to walk right in the front door. Oh no. You want me to get us into the Senate gathering, I said. Not quite, Webb said. I want you to get yourself in. You are an assassin. You know how to blend in, how to bypass security, how to get close to high-value targets. You go in as my advanced scout. Plant the broadcasting equipment Click will prepare. We handle the data release remotely. You get out. Simple. Simple, I repeated. Walking into the most secure facility in the sector, during maximum security protocols, with equipment designed to hack their systems. Simple. Well, Webb said, when you say it like that, it sounds dangerous. Because it is dangerous, I pointed out, possibly louder than strictly necessary. Torres chuckled. It sounded like an avalanche. I like this one. They have self-preservation instincts. Look, Webb said, his tone becoming more serious. I will not pretend this is safe. It is not. But Vornis murdered 22,000 beings and got away with it. They have continued to murder anyone who got close to exposing them. And they will keep murdering until someone stops them. We are that someone. And yeah, it is risky. Yeah, we might not make it out. But I have spent 3 years salvaging junk in space, trying to forget what I saw in the guild files, trying to forget the things I did for money. This is my chance to actually do something that matters. Something good. He looked at me directly. You do not owe me anything. You can walk away right now. No judgment. But if you stay, if you help us, we can actually make a difference. We can make sure Vornis faces consequences. We can make sure those 22,000 beings are not just a forgotten statistic. I hate it when humans get emotional. It makes it very difficult to think logically. And if we fail? I asked. Then we fail spectacularly, Webb said. And at least we tried. I looked around the room. Torres looked ready for war. Rena was already calculating something on her datapad, probably explosive yields. Click was organizing data streams with practiced efficiency. And Webb stood there, this human who should have been dead, waiting for my answer. I thought about my 300,000 credits. I thought about my comfortable life as an assassin. I thought about all the rules I was about to break. Then I thought about 22,000 beings who never got a choice. Fine, I said. But when this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, I am blaming you entirely. Webb grinned. Would not have it any other way. And that was how I ended up committing to possibly the stupidest plan I had ever heard. 3 days to infiltrate the Senate, expose a genocidal war criminal, and probably die in the process. Humans. Completely, utterly, absolutely insane. And apparently I was too, because I was actually going to help them. May the stars have mercy on all our souls. So here is something they definitely do not teach you at assassin school. How to commit high treason against a galactic government while working with a team of ex-operatives who have collectively decided that suicide by politics is a reasonable career. Move. The next 72 hours were, in technical terms, absolutely bonkers. Click spent the first day building what they called a quantum relay broadcaster, which, as far as I could understand through their rapid technical explanations, was basically a device that would hijack every communication satellite within 3 star systems simultaneously. Small problem. It was the size of a briefcase and would need to be placed within 50 meters of the Senate chamber's main communication hub. Cannot you make it smaller? I asked, watching Click assemble components that probably violated 6 different weapons treaties. Certainly, Click said, mandibles clicking in amusement. If you would like it to have a broadcast range of approximately 12 meters and the processing power of a children's toy, I can make it much smaller. The briefcase is fine, I muttered. Webb spent most of his time organizing the data package. 22,000 casualties generates a lot of documentation, apparently. Reports, video logs, testimony recordings from the few survivors. He sat at a terminal for hours, his face illuminated by screens showing things that made even my cold-blooded species feel sick. You do not have to watch all of it, Torres said at one point, putting a hand on Webb's shoulder. Yeah, Webb replied, not looking away from the screen. I really do. Rena focused on our exit strategy, which primarily seemed to involve identifying which walls would be easiest to blow holes through when security inevitably tried to kill us. She had a very direct approach to problem-solving that I found simultaneously terrifying and oddly comforting. Worst-case scenario, she explained while showing me a station schematic: we blow the eastern wall here, depressurize sections 9 through 14, and use the chaos to reach the emergency shuttle bay. That will kill people, I pointed out. Those sections will automatically seal. Safety protocols. Probably. She did not sound entirely certain. Look, we are trying to expose a mass murderer in front of the entire galaxy. Little property damage is acceptable collateral. I was surrounded by lunatics. Competent lunatics, but lunatics nonetheless. My job was to figure out how to actually get inside. Senate security was no joke. Biometric scanners, neural pattern recognition, armed guards from 12 different species, energy barriers, the works. Getting past all of that while carrying a briefcase full of highly illegal broadcasting equipment was going to require creativity. Or, as it turned out, forgery. Senate maintenance crew, Torres said on day 2, dropping a uniform on the table in front of me. They have access to most technical areas, including the communication hub. I picked up the uniform. It was designed for a species approximately my size. Where did you get this? Do not ask questions you do not want answers to, Torres replied. The uniform came with falsified credentials, a work order for routine maintenance, and a security clearance that Click had somehow generated using codes they absolutely should not have possessed. I decided not to think too hard about how a data specialist had access to classified Senate security protocols. This might actually work, I said, examining the credentials. Of course it will work, Webb said. Torres used to do this kind of thing professionally, before he retired. Retired? I looked at Torres. The big human shrugged. Military intelligence. Spent 15 years infiltrating places I was not supposed to be. Got tired of it. Retired, started tending bar. Much more peaceful. Usually. And you? I asked Rena. In Demolitions Corps, she said without looking up from her explosive calculations. 43 combat deployments. Decided I liked my organs inside my body. Retired. Took up brewing. Webb found me because I supplied the station with decent alcohol. I turned to Click. Let me guess. Signals intelligence. Cybersecurity specialist, Click corrected. Worked for the Quilvan Defense Network for 22 years. Retired after I realized I was helping rich politicians protect their corruption. Now I live here and occasionally hack things for entertainment. So this entire team, I said slowly, is retired military and intelligence operatives who decided to run a bar on a garbage station in the middle of nowhere. When you say it like that, it sounds sad, Webb said. We prefer to think of it as a well-earned vacation that occasionally involves light treason. Light treason, I repeated. Would you prefer heavy treason? Rena asked. Because we can arrange that too. These humans were going to be the death of me. Probably literally. Day 3 arrived faster than I would have liked. The Senate gathering was scheduled for 1,400 hours station time. We had transport arranged, falsified documentation prepared, and approximately 67 different ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Remember, Webb said as we did final equipment checks, you get in, plant the broadcaster, get out. We handle everything else from here. You do not need to be a hero. I am an assassin, I reminded him. Heroism was never part of the job description. But good, Webb said. Because heroes tend to die dramatically, and I would prefer you stay alive. You are growing on me. Like a fungus, I muttered. Exactly like a fungus. The transport to the capital world took 3 hours. I spent that time memorizing every detail of the Senate building's layout. Maintenance corridors, security checkpoints, the emergency exits. The communication hub was located on sublevel 3, accessible through a service corridor that supposedly had minimal security, because who would be stupid enough to break into the Senate building? Us, apparently. We would be that stupid. The capital world was called Axis Prime. Orbital stations surrounded it like a metal halo. The planet below was mostly city, massive structures of glass and steel that stretched toward the sky as if trying to escape gravity itself. The Senate building sat at the center of the primary continent, a massive domed structure that probably cost more than most planetary economies. I docked at a commercial port, cleared customs using my false credentials, and took public transport to the Senate district. No weapons, no suspicious equipment. Just a Vexorian maintenance worker heading to a routine job with a briefcase full of highly illegal technology. Perfectly normal. Security checkpoint 1 was at the building's entrance. 2 Carthian guards, armed with pulse rifles. They scanned my credentials, checked my biometrics, and waved me through without a second glance. So far, so good. Checkpoint 2 was at the sublevel access corridor. 1 human guard, older, looked bored. He glanced at my work order, scanned my credentials again, and nodded me toward the elevator. The communication hub, level 3. Service corridor B. You know the way? I have the map, I said, holding up my datapad. All right, try not to break anything expensive. And he returned to whatever he had been reading on his terminal. I took the elevator down. My hearts were beating faster than strictly comfortable. This was different from assassination work. When I killed people, I controlled the situation. I chose the time, the place, the method. This was improvisation. Humans were apparently very good at improvisation. I was not. The elevator doors opened to sublevel 3. Service corridor B stretched ahead, dimly lit, utilitarian. Pipes ran along the ceiling. The floor was metal grating. I could hear the building's environmental systems humming through the walls. I walked casually, checking my datapad like I belonged there. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned me. The communication hub was exactly where the schematics indicated, behind a door marked with technical warnings and authorization requirements. I used the security bypass Click had provided. The door slid open. Inside was exactly what I expected. Server banks, cooling systems, communication arrays that linked this building to every major news network and government database in the sector. And absolutely no people, because maintenance crews were supposed to schedule their presence in advance. I set down the briefcase, opened it, and extracted Click's broadcaster. The device was covered in blinking lights that seemed unnecessarily dramatic. I found an access port, connected the broadcaster, and activated it according to Click's instructions. A small screen on the device lit up. Connection established. Standby mode active. Ready for remote activation. I should have left right then. That was the plan. Plant the device, exit the building, return to the station. Simple, clean, professional. Instead, I heard footsteps in the corridor outside. I froze. The footsteps got closer. Multiple people. Voices. One of them very familiar. Senator Vornis. Of course. Because why would anything about this operation go smoothly? I quickly closed the briefcase and looked for somewhere to hide. Options were limited. Server banks offered some concealment, but not much. If they came inside for any reason, I was done. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Are you certain the communication array is secure? That was Vornis. I had heard recordings of their voice during the briefings. Smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that made you trust them right up until they ordered your execution. Senator, we have the best encryption available. Different voice. Male. Probably an aide. Nobody can access these systems without authorization. I want additional security assigned to this level, Vornis said. Redundancy is never wasted. Of course, Senator. I will arrange it immediately. They continued walking past the door. I allowed myself to breathe again. That was too close. Way too close. I waited 5 minutes, then exited the communication hub. The service corridor was empty. I walked back toward the elevator with forced calm, every instinct screaming at me to run. Checkpoint 2. The same guard. He waved me through. Finish already? That was fast. Simple calibration, I lied. Everything is optimal. Checkpoint 1. The Carthian guards did not even look up. Then I was outside. Fresh air. Crowded streets. Anonymous public transport. I had done it. I had actually infiltrated the Senate building, planted highly illegal equipment, and escaped without being caught. Webb was going to be insufferably smug about this. I returned to the station 6 hours before the scheduled broadcast. The team was ready. Click sat surrounded by terminals, fingers flying across multiple keyboards simultaneously. Taurus checked weapons we hopefully would not need. Rena had explosive charges prepared just in case. And Webb stood watching the main screen, which showed a live feed of the Senate chamber. "You made it," he said without turning around. "Obviously," I replied. "The broadcaster is in place, ready for remote activation." "Good," Webb said, "because we are about to make a lot of very powerful people very angry." The Senate gathering began at precisely 1,400 hours. Representatives from 412 worlds filled the chamber. Cameras broadcast the event to trillions of viewers across the galaxy. And somewhere in the middle of that gathering, looking confident and comfortable, sat Senator Vornis. "Click," Webb said quietly. "Are we ready?" "All systems connected," Click replied. I have access to primary broadcast networks, government databases, public forums, and approximately 12,000 news outlets. When I activate, everyone will see what we send, simultaneously. No way to stop it without shutting down half the sector's communications. Rena Torres, exit routes confirmed? Shuttle is fueled and ready, Torres said. If security shows up here, we can be off the station in 90 seconds. Krell Webb looked at me. Last chance to back out. Once we do this, there is no going back. I thought about it. I really did. I thought about my comfortable life as an assassin. I thought about the 300,000 credits I was not going to collect. I thought about every rule I was breaking. Then I thought about 22,000 beings who never got a choice. Do it, I said. Webb nodded. Click. Execute. Click's fingers moved. Code streamed across multiple screens, and then, suddenly, every display in the Senate chamber flickered. The live broadcast cut away from the current speaker. Instead, it showed something else. The facility. Old. Abandoned. And then images. Terrible images. Beings in cages. Experiments. Suffering. Death. Documentation appeared. Reports with Vornis's signature. Authorization for experiments. Budget allocations. Communications discussing mortality rates like they were discussing weather. The Senate chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives were shouting. Security was rushing around. And the cameras kept broadcasting everything to the entire galaxy. Senator Vornis sat frozen in their seat, face visible to trillions of viewers. Shock. Then denial. Then the slow realization that their carefully constructed life was collapsing in real time. Webb pulled up audio. A recording. Vornis's voice. Clear. Undeniable. Authorization confirmed for test series 9 through 14. Acceptable mortality rate, 90%. Proceed with Quilvan subjects. If they expire, requisition more from the detention centers. Maintain security. This research is critical. The Senate chamber went silent. Every representative, every aide, every security officer stared at screens showing the evidence. Senator Vornis, someone said, I think it was the Senate Majority Speaker. You are hereby placed under arrest pending investigation of crimes against sentient beings. Security moved toward Vornis. The senator tried to stand, tried to speak, but no words came out. What could they say? The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Public. Click cut the broadcast feed. The job was done. That, Torres said into the silence of our operations room, was extremely satisfying. Do not celebrate yet, Rena warned. Vornis has powerful friends. They will be looking for who did this. Let them look, Webb said. He was smiling, actually smiling. The data is public now. Millions of copies across thousands of systems. They cannot suppress it. They cannot spin it. Vornis is done. My datapad chirped. Incoming message. Assassin's Guild. I opened it. Contract on Marcus Webb. Cancelled. Reason, client arrested. Payment status void. Note, Operative Krell, you have some explaining to do. I showed Webb the message. He laughed. Actually laughed. I got you in trouble with your bosses, he said. Significantly, I agreed. Was it worth it? I looked at the screen, still showing news feeds of the chaos at the Senate. Reporters were calling it the biggest political scandal in a generation. Already, other representatives connected to Vornis were being investigated. The entire corrupt network was unraveling. Ask me again when the Guild is not threatening to terminate my employment, I said. Fair enough. But honestly, yeah, it was worth it. The next few days were tense. Security forces searched for the source of the hack. They traced signals, analyzed code, interviewed hundreds of people. But Click had covered their tracks well. The broadcaster self-destructed after transmission, leaving no physical evidence. The code was routed through so many proxy servers that tracing it would take years. We stayed on the station, maintaining our cover. Torres served drinks. Rena brewed alcohol. Click organized data. Webb ran salvage operations. And I, apparently, was now part of their strange little family of retired operatives who occasionally committed treason for the greater good. The Guild contacted me officially 3 weeks later. I was summoned to a secure conference. They were not happy. "You abandoned a contract," the Guildmaster said. They were a Zenthari, 6-limbed, covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with their mood. Currently, those patterns suggested extreme irritation. The client was arrested for war crimes, I pointed out. The contract became void. You knew about those crimes before the arrest. You chose to assist in exposing them rather than completing your assignment. Yes, that is not how we operate. Perhaps, I said carefully, it should be. The Guildmaster's patterns shifted. Surprise, maybe. Explain, Ornus killed 22,000 beings. They would have killed more to protect their secrets. They would have killed me eventually, once I became a loose end. By exposing them, I eliminated a future threat. That is good business. That is rationalization. That is survival, I corrected. The Guild exists because we are professionals. We assess risks. We adapt. We survive. Working for someone like Vornus would have ended badly regardless. I chose the option where I stayed alive and did something meaningful. Silence. The Guildmaster's patterns shifted through several colors I did not recognize. "You have always been one of our best operatives," they finally said. "Your success rate is exceptional. Your discretion is valued. But this situation is unprecedented. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. We are placing you on probation. 6 months. During that time, you will not receive primary contracts. Secondary assignments only. If you complete those without further incidents, we will reassess your status." Probation was better than termination. I had expected worse. "Understood," I said. And Krell, the Guildmaster, added, "If you ever decide to go rogue again, please do so less publicly. The Guild does not appreciate attention." Noted. Noted. The conference ended. I returned to the station. Webb was waiting at the bar with a drink already prepared. "How bad?" he asked. 6 months. It could be worse. It could be better. Webb slid the drink across. "To making terrible decisions that occasionally work out?" I picked up the glass. "To surviving those decisions." We drank. It was terrible. Human alcohol always was. But I was getting used to it. 6 months later, the Guild reinstated me fully. Ornus was sentenced to life imprisonment on a maximum security facility. 14 other officials connected to the weapons program were arrested. The facility known as Black Site Omega was officially acknowledged, and memorials were built for the victims. And I, against all logic and professional judgment, continued occasionally working with Webb and his team. Not full-time. Just when something particularly corrupt or evil needed addressing. Someone had to do it, apparently. And as well be the group of retired operatives who had already proven they were good at extremely stupid plans that somehow worked. Humans. Still completely insane. But sometimes that insanity was exactly what the galaxy needed. Torres set down a glass in front of me. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "I have many problems," I replied. "You will need to be more specific. You pretend you are this cold, professional killer, but you actually care about things, about justice, about doing the right thing." That sounds like a character flaw. "It is," Webb said, joining the conversation. "But it is a good character flaw. The best kind." Rena walked over with her datapad. New situation. Corrupt mining executive. Exploiting workers. Safety violations causing deaths. Authorities are ignoring it because he pays bribes. "And?" I asked. "And we could do something about it," she said. "If we wanted." I looked at Webb. He was smiling that knowing smile again. The one that meant trouble. "It would be dangerous," I said. "Probably," Webb agreed. "We might not succeed." Possibly. We could die. There is always that risk, Torres added helpfully. I looked at Click, who was already pulling up files on the mining executive. Rena had explosive calculations on her screen. Torres was checking weapons inventory. They were going to do this with or without me. These insane humans and one equally insane Quilvan were going to charge into danger because someone needed to. And I apparently was going to go with them. Because somewhere along the way I had stopped being just an assassin. I had become part of something else. Something better. Fine, I said. But I am choosing the approach vectors this time. Your plans always involve too much property damage. That is fair, Rena said. I do get enthusiastic with explosives. Webb raised his glass. To terrible plans, unlikely teams, and occasionally saving the day. We all raised our glasses. Even Click, using one of their 6 appendages. To survival, I said. To doing something that matters, Torres added. To explosions, Rena said. Because of course she did. To friends, Webb said quietly. We drank. The terrible, terrible alcohol that I had somehow grown fond of. Because here is what nobody tells you about assassins. We spend our lives in shadows, keeping distance, avoiding connections. But sometimes you meet a group of completely insane people who decide that impossible odds are just suggestions. And suddenly you realize that maybe, just maybe, there are things worth more than contracts and credits. Things like justice, like friendship, like knowing that you made a difference, even if it was small, even if it was dangerous, even if it was absolutely, completely, utterly insane. Senator Vornis was probably sitting in a cell somewhere, wondering how a simple assassination contract had ended their entire career. They had sent the best. They had expected a clean kill. Instead, they got exposed, arrested, and imprisoned. Because they made one critical mistake. They assumed the assassin would kill the target. They did not account for the possibility that the assassin and the target might decide to work together. And they definitely did not account for humans. Humans who look at impossible situations and say, let us try anyway. The humans who form attachments to random beings they meet in bars. Humans who believe that doing the right thing is worth dying for. I had worked alone for 17 years. I had been good at it. Professional. Successful. Cold. Now I sat in a grimy bar on a forgotten station with 4 individuals who had collectively decided that making the galaxy slightly better was worth risking everything. And somehow, despite all logic and reason, I was happy. Webb caught my eye. You are thinking too much again. I am thinking an appropriate amount, I said. No such thing. Come on, we have planning to do. This mining executive is not going to expose himself. We moved to the operations room. Screens came alive with data. Maps appeared. Plans formed. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought about how strange life could be. One moment, you are a successful assassin with a simple job. Kill the target. Collect payment. Move on. The next moment, you are part of a team planning to take down a corrupt industrialist, probably going to get yourself killed, and absolutely certain it is the right thing to do. Humans. They ruin everything, including, apparently, perfectly good assassins. But you know what? I would not change it. Not for all the credits in the galaxy. Well, maybe for half the credits in the galaxy. Okay, fine. Not even for half the credits. Humans really are contagious. And that, friends, is the story of how an alien assassin missed once, the human did not, and everything changed. Because sometimes the best way to survive is not to stay in the shadows. Sometimes you have to step into the light and fight for something that matters, even if it is terrifying, even if it is dangerous, even if it means working with humans who think explosions solve most problems. Actually, Rena might be onto something with that last one. But that is a story for another time. For now, we have work to do. And I, somehow, would not want to be anywhere else. The galaxy is not going to save itself, after all. Might as well be us.